Let us revise for 5-10 minutes the concepts of Kohut and then go to linking them with DSM disorders. There was a gap in between, so let's revise it.
Thank you, sir.
We said in Kohut, the central concept is the concept of self. And the self can be a healthy self, a normal self, or unhealthy self. And if it is unhealthy self, then within that, it can be a psychotic self, a borderline self, or a narcissistic self. So essentially, we are looking at all pathology deriving in some way from an unhealthy self, which is either psychotic, borderline, or narcissistic. And having this three elemental causation of all pathology is something which is common between Kohut and Lacan and also CBT. CBT also has a three elemental causation. I am not good enough. I am not likable. The world is not a safe place. So essentially, all pathology has to collapse into these three fundamental elemental causations in CBT. Similarly, in Lacan, we have three fundamental operations which are at the root of all pathology: repression, perversion, disavowal. Similarly, for Kohut, everything at the root is either out of psychotic self, borderline self, or a narcissistic self. And then the question arises, how does a self become a healthy self or an unhealthy self? What happens in childhood? And Kohut puts there 10 concepts, 10 experiences of childhood, which, if they go on well, the child ends up with a healthy self. And if something goes wrong in these 10 experiences of childhood, the child may end up with an unhealthy self. And the more traumatic the experiences are, the more the child shifts from a narcissistic self towards a borderline self, towards a psychotic self. So let us look at this 10 early life childhood experiences which determine the nature of the self which gets created, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. And if unhealthy, how unhealthy. So let's quickly go over it. We have done it before, but let me just revise it very quickly. The first concept is the concept of mirroring. And in very simple words, it has to do with, in an oversimplified way, with self-worth. What people think about me, how they treat me, how they respond to me. The second is idealization, which in simple words is, how do I find people? In mirroring, how do people find me? And in idealization, how do I find people? Are there people who are ideal enough in various ways, be it in terms of being soft, delicate, considerate, having soothing capacity, having competence? Do I find them good enough to internalize and thereby internalize the qualities that they have? And over a period of time, I develop those on my own. So then the internalization is in a way permanent. What Kohut would say, transmuting internalization has happened. The third is empathy. Does the environment show me empathy? In simple words, do I feel safe? Do I feel understood? Do I feel safe? Do I feel accepted? Do I feel understood? Fourth is self-object experience. Do I have some power over the other? Do I have a right over the other? Will the other do as I ask him to, at least to some extent? So instead of being a victim in any human encounter, do I enter any human encounter with a sense of power? That will the other do something that I want him to do? Or will I have to constantly do as he wants me to do? So these are the self-object experiences. The twinship experience is, in simple words, I am not alone. I am a part of community. And there are many like me of my same age and with similar concerns, similar strengths and weaknesses, similar aspirations. So twinship gets into that. Alter ego is a particular kind of twinship at times it is different. Some people think they are synonymous, but I feel they are better kept different. And the idea there is somebody not only generically like me, of the same age, of the same strengths and weaknesses, of the same aspirations, but in specific, somebody is like me. And so I am not alone being what I am. There is somebody very like me, and I am okay. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing odd about being the way I am, because I find somebody else also very much like me. So it brings this element of I am okay. There is a popular book, I am okay, you are okay. So this brings this I am okay when I find somebody specifically like. So there is a generic rehabilitation in twinship and a specific rehabilitation in altering. That one does not feel one is the oddball out and there is nobody else like oneself and one is actually a difficult or an odd thing. Yes, you are saying something.
Sir, I thought mirroring also could be similar to twinship actually.
The difference will be in mirroring, we look forward to caregivers and we deduce from the way they deal with us whether we are worthy or not, whether we can express ourselves or not. In twinship, both the individuals are relatively of the same age, having the same concerns, having the same dependencies on their caregivers. So of course there is mirroring between the two of them, and that has to be healthy. But the core there is that you rehabilitate yourself by telling yourself that you are not alone, you belong to a community. That there are children in every family like you, and there is a group of such people, and it is natural to be what you are. And then within the twinship, when you find everyone is so different, and you find somebody like yourself, the alter ego part gets satisfied. That one feels anchored, that one is not the only sample in this world. There are many. One is a part of a group. And that rehabilitates one. It is a natural thing to be what I am. One stops feeling insecure about being an aberration. So the self-acceptance and the anchoring of one's uniqueness that happens because the uniqueness happens to be of a group, not of an individual. So twinship experiences, alter ego experiences. Then the arc of tension, the professional competence. Do I have professional competence adequate to my goals? So in simple words, arc of tension covers that area. Then impingement, which is intrusion. And what is covered is going on being, that the child feels secure. What Mahler says, the secure base, that the child goes to play in the other room, but occasionally comes back to check if the mother is there. He wants to reassure himself of the secure base, where he can come occasionally, feel secure, nourish himself with safety and assurance, and then go back. So that is covered by what is called going on being,
which happens every Monday.
Then we come to optimum frustration. That satisfaction has to be followed by frustration. It should not be the other way around. And frustration has to be of lower intensity compared to satisfaction. And satisfaction has to be adequate compared to our desire. Only when these three things are coordinated, that frustration becomes optimum and not traumatic. Otherwise, frustration can easily turn traumatic. So we are looking at first satisfaction, second adequate satisfaction, third frustration, and fourth frustration within limits, and fifth frustration again followed by satisfaction. And when these cycles repeat, then we develop resilience and not pathology of excess or scarcity. So it's a complicated thing to develop resilience. Only providing something or taking away something does not provide resilience. It actually leads to pathology. So this is very important, to satisfy and then optimally frustrate. Only satisfaction leads to entitlement. Only scarcity leads to excessive greed and obsession. Adequate satisfaction followed by calibrated frustration, followed by satisfaction again. That slowly, repeatedly, when you undergo the cycles, you develop resilience. Some might be able to develop resilience with just scarcity, but they are very few. The 10th concept was of transmuting internalization, which is two words, transmuting and internalizing. Internalization, meaning internalization is very clear, taking something in and making it our own. And transmuting is, it's a specific kind of internalization which brings about a positive change in oneself, which is permanent. Which means what is outside is now a part of us inside. We no longer need the outside because the inside has changed. Like when caregivers tell us in early childhood that you are very good, you are very good. And at one point we take it in and we make it a part of us. And now we believe we are very good. Now we don't need the outside voice. We have enough of the inside voice. So the outside has been internalized in a permanent way. And so the outside is no longer something we depend upon to have that store of something that provides us. And this is at the core of all change, including healing. So for Kohut, healing inevitably involves transmuting internalization. That something from the therapist, something from the process of therapy, something from the safe space of the therapy room is internalized, which brings about a permanent change in the person. And the change is of such nature that the outside is no longer required. So there can be temporary changes and there can be a relatively permanent change. And that permanent change is what we are referring to by transmuting internalization. In fact, we can define another term, temporary transmuting internalization. Because here the word permanent is implicit. So in fact, we should be defining two words, temporary transmuting internalization and a permanent transmuting internalization. But here when we say only transmuting internalization, permanent is implicit. So these 10 experiences, if they go well in early childhood, one develops a healthy self. If they go wrong, one develops an unhealthy self. And how wrong they go, that will create the quality of the unhealthy self, whether it is narcissistic, borderline, or psychotic. Worst is psychotic. Second worst is borderline, and least worst, so to say, is narcissistic. And Kohut differentiates them on the basis of cohesion. And the opposite of cohesion is fragmentation. How easily they fragment, they disintegrate. So the psychotic self can disintegrate even without an external event, just because of some internal event. A borderline self will require mild to moderate outside stress, usually a moderate stress. And a narcissistic self will require severe or at least moderate to severe stress to disintegrate. So the cohesion increases from psychotic self to the narcissistic self, and the propensity to fragmentation reduces. And when the self is cohesive, it coordinates the psychic system very well. It deploys the defenses correctly with adequate strength, and that maintains a healthy situation. And the self also provides, a healthy self also provides spontaneity, vitality, positivity, enterprise, and a desire to engage and prosper in the world. So all the 10 put together lead to creation of self-cohesion. And cohesion refers to health. It refers to resistance or resilience to fragmentation. It refers to coordination. It refers to spontaneity. It refers to vitality. It refers to positivity. It refers to enterprise, curiosity, creativity. It's a center of everything positive, so to say. And self-fragmentation will lead to problems where spontaneity, vitality, positivity, ability to use defenses all goes down. So this is how the self gets created in Kohut's idea, in Kohut's thinking. And if these 10 are okay, you end up with a healthy self. If these 10 are not okay, you end up with an unhealthy self. So now let us look into what happens if each of them goes wrong, what kind of pathology it will result in DSM terms.
Sir, can I ask something? I realize that like Erickson, there is.
Sorry?
Am I audible, please?
Yeah, please go on.
like in Erickson's stage, there is creativity versus stagnation and integrity versus despair of later years of life. That no such thing as given in other personality theories. They focus only until you receive from the world and become a cohesive good self. But Erickson also says what can be given in which stage and you give to a society. This was one thought that crossed my mind, may not be complete accurate. And there is no neurosis that is considered in this spectrum. We consider only psychotic, borderline, and narcissistic, but no generalized neurosis like anxiety. I don't mean to say pan neurosis of Hoek and Polatin, but anxiety may be not phobia, not OCD, nothing, but just anxious, or that the cluster C, so to say, anxious, dependent, obsessive. Those kind of personalities are not regarded as disorders in this discussion. So they are healthy, actually, they are giving to the society. And sorry, I'm saying something wrong.
No, 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 not at all. Both the questions are very, very good questions. Very good question. We should discuss both of them. They're very good questions. What you are pointing out is very correct. That psychoanalytic thinkers, when they create a system, they are not creating it for DSM. And these are like two parallel systems. We are doing the unthinkable job of connecting the two. And this is where the difficulty of allocating DSM disorders to psychoanalytic concepts comes in. Like what you said, where is neurosis in the three of them? How will any Kohut follower analyze or understand a patient of anxiety or personality disorder? Like if somebody comes with dependence or histrionicity to a Kohutian, how will he understand it and how will he heal it? Because regardless of which school you follow, all patients are going to come to you. So the practitioner has to find some way of fitting all existing sicknesses within the school framework in some way or the other, efficient or inefficient, accurate or inaccurate, something has to be done. Or you have to bring in other schools for deployment. But if you are a pure Hoosier or a pure follower of any school, the problem is the same. That you have to fit somehow every sickness, and that is one of the reasons where every sickness is not engaged with equal efficiency by every school. Every school is strong in some areas and not strong in other areas. But the followers, they claim that they can do everything with the school. So they fit in something somewhere, somehow or the other. Now coming to your question. How would these things fit into the Kohutian framework? So one way to answer this is that Kohut has actually reworded the ancient classification of neurosis, borderline, and psychosis. So what he calls narcissistic self essentially covers everything except psychosis and borderline. So it covers all the personality disorders, it covers anxiety, it covers depression. So we will see how that trick happens, how that conceptual magic or conceptual trick, whatever you wish to call it, how that happens. But if you remember the old time classification, neurosis, initially it was only neurosis and psychosis. A group of sicknesses where reality testing is intact is neurosis, reality testing is lost is psychosis. Very clear. Then in between state came in. For some, there are some symptoms of reality testing being lost, but rest of the symptoms are neurotic. So the borderline came in. Original meaning of the word borderline.
Borderline anxiety organization, not borderline disorder.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So initially, the word borderline was an organizational description. It was not a disorder description. Disorder came much later. So initially, when you had a psychic organization where you had part characteristics of a neurotic structure and part characteristics of a psychotic structure, we labeled it as borderline structure. So it was an organizational descriptor, not a disorder descriptor. So Kohut, in fact, is doing something very similar from a different conceptual direction. That everything neurotic is covered by the narcissistic self and dynamics of narcissistic self. Everything psychotic is covered by the psychotic self and the dynamics of psychotic self. And something that has characteristics of both is covered by the borderline self and the dynamics of borderline self. So how will that get explained? Somebody will say comes with depression or anxiety. Somebody comes with depression and the Kohutian will say the narcissistic self, because of its unhealthy nature. Just give me a moment.
Sure.
Sorry for the disturbance. So we are looking at the Kohutian will say the unhealthy self is not capable of spontaneity and vitality. And because of the lack of spontaneity and essentially vitality, that you see the depression. The self is incapable of vitality. Now, when it comes to anxiety, they will say that the narcissistic self is getting chipped off in some way. It's undergoing some sort of fragmentation of a minor nature, and the fragmentation is leading to anxiety. So the ideas there associated with the self are of spontaneity, vitality, positivity, strength, enterprise, cohesion, fragmentation. And the core ideas are of cohesion and fragmentation. That cohesion will lead to spontaneity and vitality. Essentially vitality. So cohesion will lead to vitality and fragmentation will lead to anxiety and depressive features. So that is how depression and anxiety will get factored in. Similarly, the histrionic features, like the schizoidal features, will be attributed to the narcissistic self, and the histrionic features may get attributed either to narcissistic or to borderline self. They are more akin to borderline self, the histrionic features. whereas the schizoidal features are more akin to the narcissistic self. The paranoid personality disorder is more akin to the borderline self. So that is how they will get explained within the framework. So all DSM has to be explained in every school. Not necessarily it is accurate, but people will find a way to force feed an explanation. And we know intuitively it's a force fitted explanation, doesn't seem natural. Now coming to, you had asked something else before. It was a very good question. What was the first question you said?
That, for example, Freud and Freudians stop short at the internal intrapsychic development and then repetition compulsion. Whereas Erikson said that we continue to grow and there is creativity versus stagnation and integrity versus despair as these tasks specific to later years of life.
Correct. So this brings us to an important question across schools in psychoanalysis. Just as every school in psychoanalysis does not have a model of the mind, every school in psychoanalysis also does not have the concept of program of life. Now, what you are referring to is the concept of program of life, which you find in Jung and Erikson. Both these theories are program of life theories. Whereas rest of the theories say that the essential psychic makeup is built in the first 5 years and then it is responding to external situation. But they are not focusing upon a very natural program of life that every individual generically follows. So that is in a way a limitation of theories, that a good theory would have both a model of the mind and a program of life approach, right? Apart from the first 5-year approach, which everyone by and large has. So the ideal will be to have a model of the mind, to have phenomena of the first 5 years, and then the program of life. And in each decade or in each phase of life, how does your first 5-year processes or your model of the mind work out? So Jung will describe the same thing in terms of archetypes. That the moment you are a teenager, the prince archetype will be activated. Then you go out to a job, the hunter archetype is activated. Then you become a parent, so the father archetype is activated. Then you become a middle-aged person. So the
Attention is given to development.
yeah, the teacher archetype or the trader archetype or the bureaucrat archetype, something is activated. And then as you go into the old age, the old wise man is activated. So instead of using periods, he is using the social roles, and archetypes corresponding to that social role have to be activated or deactivated. And if you look at those social roles, everyone has to go through that program. So now
Yes, sir.
let us look at the let us connect each of the important concepts of Kohut to DSM 5-tier disorders. The first concept on which the whole of self psychology is based is the concept of self. And obviously, every pathology depends on the self. Unless Kohut told us that my concepts explain A, B, C, and they don't explain D, E, F. But Kohut never said what is not explained by his concepts, or where other schools fall short and he should be used as a complement, because he has almost created something as an independent, autonomous, in an implicit way, a self-sufficient school. So from that point of view, the concept of self is involved in every pathology. Self-object. If self-object experiences don't happen, then what are the outcomes? Or they don't happen well, let me say. What are the outcomes? What do you feel? How would you connect it?
What I remember is neuroses were lost to character disorders because people started experiencing rootlessness and symptomatic neuroses were lost. So, fragmentation, I thought of fragmentation or, yeah, of in some way chipping off of the self rather than these healthy steps, mirroring, idealization, empathy, self object. Self object. Now, every concept has to have a limiting, healthy boundary also, like mirroring, like idealization, like empathy. If it goes to an excess, then that can cause harm to the system. So, that is how I thought of uh, considering this. Otherwise, this alter ego, I am okay. In fact, we mentioned I am okay, you are okay. I happened to read that book in second MBBS, and that is what actually prompted me to uh, take psychiatry
Uh-huh.
because I loved this thing. Um, it was kind of marketing arrangement or presentation
Uh-huh.
of psychology. And then I thought whatever they are doing in Sassoon or psychiatry department is really medieval practice.
Right.
Talk to the patient for two questions, four questions, and send him to ECT. I thought that was completely wrong because Thomas Harris was on my head. So then slowly I was also criticized by my teacher when I joined psychiatry that you are using the personality theoretician that you remember for every
Ah,
patient. I
correct.
said, yes, I'm actually doing that. But then I realized later, much later, when I read Bernard, that yes, you cannot apply a single therapy or a single model to every patient or every time.
Correct.
There is nothing wrong in that. But this is how I completely appreciate that different theories give different facets and they enrich the understanding of our understanding of mental life.
True. And it also tells us about our limitations,
Yes.
that we are not still able to integrate and create a grand theory.
Yes.
So the uh, self-object experiences means that we say self hyphen object. So the object is not autonomous of us completely. It's almost an extension of us. And such experiences are necessary in early life to feel assured about the right to ask and our right to command and our belief in goodness in oneself in terms of power and otherwise, that somebody will listen to us, that we can dare to ask. We don't have to always make a request and wait for a response. We can have a right to ask and expect it to be followed.
This
So,
is actually belief in goodness of the world also.
correct, correct. It's also a belief in the attachment the other has towards us. When we have attachment, but we don't have a assurance that other is attached equally, other is equally interested, then we are diffident in asking. Because then one, we don't know whether I have a right to ask. And second, I fear what if the other person gets annoyed and leaves or attacks. So the early self-object experiences, if they are very good, then of course there is no issue. But if they are impaired in some way, this part is impaired, then personality disorders are most likely. And if this happens very, very early in life, that you never had self-object good experience, then it is likely to be psychosis. But for that, one variable, of course, is not enough. This has to be complemented by many other traumatic factors to get into psychosis. But this can be one of the many factors. If you never had good experience, second situation, you had good experiences and then it stopped, which is more likely leading to personality disorders. And if you had good experiences for reasonable period of time, say 2 or 3 years, and then it stopped, then in all likelihood, you will not have psychosis, borderline, or personality disorders. It will be something less chronic, more episodic. There will be like a whole of predisposition, not a long crack of predisposition. So let us look at what the table says. Personality disorders, attachment disorders, interpersonal disorder, any disorder having to do with interpersonal interaction, psychosis, fetish, because the search for the self object can result in the search for a fetish object. The search for the self object can result in addiction. It can lead to obsession about one particular object. Too little of good self object experiences can lead to anxiety. It is the fear of the other. It can also lead to depression, low mood because of loss. That one tries to have the other behave as a self object, he refuses, and there is a feeling of loss. So these are some of the self object impairment issues. Now let us look at mirroring. If mirroring is a problem, then what happens? What is there in mirroring? These are the things in mirroring. The first 5 A's. If there is impairment in this, then what happens?
There is a loss of confidence in the goodness of the world. One
Correct.
becomes cynical and maybe even paranoid.
Correct. This is a recipe for personality disorders.
Yeah.
In any personality disorder long-term therapy, you will automatically come across mirroring and idealization problems. Inevitable. Now, how the person deals with a mirroring failure, that differs from person to person.
Attachment disorders also,
Correct?
because one will be always insecure, either more anxious, obsessive, preoccupied, or dismissive.
Correct?
Mhm.
And I feel we need to add at least two more personality disorders, if not more.
Yes.
One is the negativistic personality disorder, which was there at one point in time and was later removed. And the second is inferiority personality disorder. Because
You can study me.
so the suppose the first five fail in mirroring. So I am not good enough comes up as a result of this. I am not worthy comes up. And now how the individual deals with it is different. One constitution will accept it as it is and start looking out for the omnipotent other who is a dependent. Second constitution uses reaction formation defense and jumps from I am not good enough to I am omnipotent. He is a narcissist. And the third one concludes that if I don't have to lose again, I must do something to attract or please the other. That is the histrionic. So the coping mechanisms are different. The loss and the inferiority is the same. But the way the constitution deals with the loss and inferiority are different. Loss, inferiority, powerlessness, helplessness, and shame, they are the same. But the way the constitution deals with these things, okay, how do you want to get out of this? So there the constitution makes it different. Or maybe the experiences before the loss happened, that also may play a part. So mirroring impairment will lead to all sorts of personality disorders. And extreme mirroring failures can also lead to delinquency. In some cases, it will lead to addiction. In some cases, it will lead to perversion. In some cases, it will lead to antisocial. Let us see what the table says. Personality disorders, it can lead to multiple identity if one identity is not mirrored well. Let me try another. It can lead to attack of the other, anxiety. Anxiety can lead to obsession. And it can lead to manic panic if it is extreme. Similarly, idealizing. This is idealization. If we don't find people adequate that we appreciate and we decide to internalize because they are worth it, it's an idealization failure. So what will be the first outcome? It will be antisocial. Second, it can lead to anxiety. You are not internalized the soothing. You are not internalized strong people because you found very weak, catastrophic, anxiety-driven people. You will have adjustment issues at work because you never internalize somebody competent. You internalize somebody very anxious, not sure about himself, not competent enough. Because what you saw, you internalized, and what you internalized was not good enough. So part of your feeling I am not good enough is because of internalizing people who are not good enough. What do you think will lead to idealization failure?
Borderline personality, devaluation, uh,
Correct.
so pervasive cynicism, and maybe suicidal ideation,
True.
for, depression,
Right.
and feeling famished,
Correct.
deprived all the time.
Correct. So
Mhm.
the personality disorder, antisocial, multiple identity, paraphilic, fetishes, psychosis in extreme cases, manic and panic.
Mhm.
Empathy. If this function fails in early childhood, then what does it predispose the personality to? The first is anxiety, that if you don't get empathy, then are you getting nothing or are you getting hostility? Because you can put empathy and hostility on a container, and in between will be the neutral zone, but you can put them on a container. And the more you move away from empathy, you're moving towards hostility. So the fear of attack, the lack of support, the lack of holding, the world is not a safe place. I am not good enough to deserve goodness. All of this will come up. And the essential range will be the range of anxiety. And if the attacks are very extreme, then we may look at psychosis. But more likely will be anxiety, less likely will be a personality disorder based upon attack, which usually results in bipolar or borderline or paranoid, and even less chances are of psychosis. And this in turn, this kind of high anxiety can also lead to addiction, that one may take to addiction in order to drown one's anxiety. Because addiction often is a derivative of trying to manage anger, anxiety, or sadness. So it's often a derivative. Yeah.
I came across a short video podcast on empathy, and I found it good, but I did not understand how much of it was actually true. They said excess of empathy can often lead to what we say compassion fatigue, and then damage to self if you become excessively empathizing. But they said no, all empaths do not go that way. They call them empaths. All empaths do not go that way, and actually they will learn and internalize the capacity for discretion, and then they know how to limit their empathy to wishing and advising, but not getting used by the other person. And if you reach that stage, then you call it Sophia,
Acha.
Sophia. This is what I came across. For your examination, I perhaps have saved that video. If I find it, is it okay to send it to you?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Sure.
So you're right. We are looking at deserved empathy, and that is calibrated empathy. Because excess of it, as you said, can easily be exploited by the weaker part of the personality. And the worst exploiters are the antisocial spectrum individuals, where the perversion is set so strongly that the perversion and the manipulative nature manipulates even the empathy. So that is something to be aware of, that the empathy has to be deserved and calibrated. And one has to be aware of the fact that it is not used by a perversion of the patient. And that is very common in antisocial. It's also common in uh, narcissism. In fact, there is a lot of overlap between narcissism and antisocial. You will find very few people who are antisocial but not narcissistic.
Yes. I remember a quote, perhaps from our textbook, is that uh, in the prisons you will find more narcissist personalities disorders rather than antisocial. Because antisocial don't get carried away in the emotion and don't do it for the pride. They
Correct.
do it in a calculated and remain away. So, commensurate with their intelligence, they will be able to avoid the prison.
True.
But narcissists does not bother. They say, my pride is the most important.
True. And the dependent will himself go to the police and hand over oneself. I knew of a dependent whose child had told the parent that he had committed some crime, and the parent took that child to the police. Hello.
Dependent personality disorder.
The parent had a dependent personality with extremely high guilt.
But what
Hello.
should happen?
Hello. Hello. Uh, I believe you're asking your dependent would be highly attached. So how is he to give up? Because, okay,
Saying he is conscientious, he
yes,
understands the responsibility to the state, which is more than my relationship with my child, and therefore he went to the police.
right,
So, citizen is more important than my father, father getting.
correct. Another way to conceptualize this is
Mm-hmm,
the attachment to the child is very strong.
mm-hmm,
This is the case for any dependent person.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Attachments are very strong. Uh, but the attachment and submission to the father figure, the state, is strong.
mm-hmm. More stronger than. Mm.
So we are looking at contest between two attachments
Yeah.
in the
And
face of the omnipotent father.
receiver is stronger than the giver. He did not grow enough. But then the corollary is he should not have reported his own child to the police.
So this is something very interesting as an event because it's a real event and
Mhm.
the reasoning out is left to us.
If at all, then I will regard myself as narcissist. I'll go to that role and take a stock of the crime. What is the crime? I will do my own evaluation of culpability, jurisprudence, how much is warranted, and can I actually correct my own child without taking him to the system? Then I will do it myself. But if
Correct.
the crime is more serious and if I were not confident in it is,
So it's really strange how the mind works in such situations. That the usual logic of attachments being supreme, that somehow gets twisted by other phenomena.
India.
So let us look at what the table says on empathy. Personality disorder, antisocial, autism, and psychosis. Autism also is put here in terms of lack of empathy.
So, what is the difference between psychopathy and sociopathy? Will both come under antisocial or they are different?
Both come under antisocial, but the difference is that sociopaths have a distinct sense of guilt, which they deactivate and sidestep. But psychopaths are believed to have near absent or absolutely weak sense of guilt. So for them, sidestepping guilt does not involve much effort. It's almost naturally done. And that's one of the reasons why they're able to do such cold crimes.
Psychopathy is worse than sociopathy.
Correct. And nobody has found any reliable method as yet to deal with psychopathy. We are still looking only at crime and punishment kind of legal methods. But from a psychological standpoint or psychiatric standpoint, nobody has actually found anything reliable for psychopathy. And most of the therapists who in their narcissism wanted to do something extraordinary and get their names in the history books, they have all been fooled by the psychopaths. Can't hear it clearly. Hello? There's something wrong with the transmission.
I'm so sorry. I will write in the chat.
Okay. I can hear you now. Please go on.
Analyze this and analyze that. Analysis is a psychoanalyst is trying to help his patient. And they're very hilarious, funny movies.
Correct.
Every time he says it is a process, his recovery is a process.
It is like that film Silence of the Lambs. It's about a psychiatrist who goes like a psychopath. And a young therapy student is sent to him. And before she goes to meet him, the director calls her to his cabin and says, never forget who he is. And never allow him to get into your mind. Because he knows how knowledgeable and manipulative that person can be. So he says two things. He says, one, never forget who he is. Because after a few interactions, you will start liking the person. He may be very good in conversation, in exchange of feelings, in providing you a good listening spot and so on. So he says, the first you bear in mind is never forget who he is. And second, he says, don't allow him to get into your mind. Don't allow him to get into your mind. Don't tell him anything personal about yourself, because once he knows, he can analyze it, talk about it. And when someone talks about you, it becomes interesting. And then you open up slowly and you never know when he has a grip on your mind. So
appreciate it.
So this is the experience of many people who have tried psychotherapy in prisons. That many people wanted to reform those who are in prison, and there are two types who are in prison. One is the unfortunate ones, and second is the antisocial ones. The unfortunate ones can definitely be helped and should be helped, but the antisocial ones, it's very difficult.
This is a new classification which should find its place in the book actually.
Ah,
There was a suspense story, a thriller by John Le Carre. He writes about I forgot the name of the book, and he describes terrorists being of three types: uh, good, bad, and the ugly.
acha,
The ugly ones are those who put explosives in children's toys and in the children's park. The
correct.
good and bad we can understand and deal with them.
So prison population you can divide into three: the
Uh,
unfortunate, the sociopaths, and the psychopaths.
yes.
And the psychopaths can't be helped, at least not with the techniques that we have. And the sociopaths, it requires very long time.
Yeah.
There's a movie on this. I think you would be told about it. Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. You've seen it.
Yeah.
I watched it.
So
Mhm.
that is a classical sociopathic movie where somebody is into sociopathy and addiction, and it takes a very long time of unconditional acceptance for that person to come up. But there are many ifs and buts,
Mm.
because every psychopath and sociopath who sees such a movie, he believes it is his story,
Mm.
which is not true, because what you see in the movie is an extremely competent person with sociopathy. He is not only a sociopath, he is an extremely competent person with sociopathy. That's a world of difference. Every sociopath does not have that kind of competence.
Amazing.
And the competence comes from sincerity and hard work.
Yes.
It doesn't fall from heaven. So when the boy is shown, we are not shown how the competence developed. So we can divide the prison population into three actually this time. So now we
Sorry,
come. Ah,
distracting. I'm distracting you quite a lot of times. Sorry.
please go on.
No, I didn't have to say anything. I just said, commented about, apologized. I wanted to apologize.
Self-attack.
Oh, self-attack for snacks.
Yeah, twinship experiences. That I have people like me, generically speaking. Like if I am between the age of 5 to 10, I meet many boys who are 5 to 10. And they have similar concerns, similar strengths and weaknesses, similar dependencies. And between us, we form a circle of reference. And then we want to perform one over the other in the context of that circle of reference. There is a very good phrase, circle of reference.
Sorry, I did not quite get it, I believe.
Uh, like every person has in his mind a few
Mhm.
people with whom he compares himself and whom he wants to impress.
Mhm.
That is a circle of reference
Mhm.
that is constantly referring in his mind to that circle,
Mhm.
which may be his family, his friends, relatives, his
Mhm.
peers.
Mhm.
Like you don't care about some person who lives in the state of, say, Andhra Pradesh, where you
Mhm.
have never been,
Mhm.
Germany, where you have never been.
Mhm.
But you would care about the 50 people that you know. So they become like the circle of reference. So here what we have is the child finds not only company, not only anchoring in community, not only reassurance that there are many like him. He is not the only helpless or the only small one. But he also creates circle of reference. Now he's competing with them. Now he's coming home and telling his parents how he's better than that X person. Or how X person did something wrong and he was punished by his parents. So that competitive thing also comes within the circle of reference. So the twinship is not only anchoring but also providing a circle of reference for the competitive thinking and behavior. In a way, it's a kind of a micro society, a micro professional society, so to say, in the relationship flavor. So the twinship experiences, if they go wrong, what can go wrong?
You have given everything, sir. It will lead to loneliness, uh, then
So just
failure.
convert this into disorders.
Yeah.
Personality
Disorder.
anxiety, depression, addiction, everything that comes out of isolation and loneliness, development of social identity. So all of this, let us see where it goes to. Personality disorders, anxiety, addiction, fetish. You could add obsession and depression. Alter ego, very much like it, but a more specific version of it. That you don't only have children like me, but somebody very like me. That I am afraid of the dark and that person is also of the dark. I like a particular chocolate and he also likes a particular chocolate. About issue X, I think Y and he also thinks Y. Very like me. Not generically, but specifically. And this can happen between a aged person and a young person also, which very often happens. That you start mentoring somebody who is young and is like what you were when you were young. You find your young version in him and you start mentoring him. It's a very classical alter ego experience. That somebody else, but specifically like me, not only generically like me. It's a more qualitative thing rather than a quantitative thing. So we are talking of alter ego experiences which usually are in the same age for the child. But occasionally the child can also find somebody elder to him who is also an alter ego. And later on when he grows up, he can find somebody very young to him who can give an alter ego experience. And that tells you that the type that you are is not finished with you. The type continues. In a way, a part of you is into the immortal realm.
Immortal?
Realm. That the type that you are will not finish with you. It will go on.
Yeah.
Somebody like you is already there, 30 years, 40 years younger than you. So the type continues.
Yes.
That gives a very different kind of alter ego experience. And often one becomes a mentor or a well-wisher of such a person because it's easy to be a well-wisher of oneself. Not easy to be a well-wisher of somebody who is very unlike us.
Yeah. I know. But mentor-mentee conflicts also had been described by somebody. I was trying to remember that book, but I don't remember. Uh, Not Venkoba Rao, but something like that, Neki or somebody. Mentor-mentee relationship. And if they go sour, then what can happen?
Oh, it's a horrible situation
Yes.
because there is a strong, more often than not, not always, but mostly a narcissistic dependent dynamic. And for the narcissist, it's like a huge betrayal. And often people don't not only stop relating, stop being a mentor, they actually become vindictive and destructive.
Yes.
So the question is, the mentor-mentee relationship, how much of it is only that, and how much of it is a narcissist-dependent relationship? If it is only that, it's a different thing. It will not get into the area of being vindictive and destructive. But if there are narcissistic dependent component, it will get there.
The mentee came into the life of the mentor because the mentor needed to learn certain spiritual lessons. Do good because you wanted to, neki kar or kuएं में डाल.
बट नार्सिसिस्ट में अलग होता है कि नेकी कर और सामने वाला अगर ना माने तो उसको कुएं में डाल. कि he is doing neki because he wants a follower and an obedient person. So he is far, far away from the ideal. Except for one category of extremely spiritual narcissists who, because of something being in their minds, would take it as a learning event. Most of them will get vindictive.
It is a good idea to become a spiritual narcissist, actually.
Yes,
It could be a good goal.
correct.
Hmm.
Because most spiritual teachers, pastors, I would say almost 60%, 70% of them are actually spiritual narcissists.
And they have gone through all that and then transcended all the difficulties and survived with or without a lot of loss. But hmm, yes, sir.
So let us complete this alter ego.
Yes.
Disorders are by and large the same. Personality
Hmm.
disorder, fetish, addiction, anxiety. You
Hmm.
could add their depression and obsession. You could also add their paraphilic, some sorts of paraphilic.
Mhm. Mhm.
And in some extreme cases, you could also find multiple identity, that the scarcity of twinship and alter ego is met by an altered personality.
Fantasy to fulfill the deprivation.
Correct. So the generic thing is the deprivation of something, what does it lead to? And the opposite of it, what does it lead to? Because one may use a defense on some traumatic thing and go to its opposite, which again will be a second pathology. Like sadness, if it is excessive, you go into depression. But if you use reaction formation, you go into mania.
Yeah.
To escape the sadness, you go into mania. Opposite of it, but yet another problem. So the excess of any traumatic thing will lead to a problem. And at times, the way you escape from it will lead to another problem. But the other problem will be less acute than this one. Like you are unable to bear anxiety and you take to addiction. Now, biologically, addiction may be far more damaging than anxiety. But psychologically, the person feels the anxiety is less bearable than the consequences of addiction. In a way, because anxiety is felt more acutely, whereas the outcomes of addiction are felt over a long period of time.
But later, even the chronic anxiety leads to changes in the brain, and there is atrophy in different areas.
True.
If you take benzodiazepines or other medicines, then there may be atrophy in the brain, but in other areas,
Correct.
different areas. So it is a trade-off actually. What do you want? You cannot escape. You can choose
Correct.
what you want to suffer.
Correct. So you present a menu of suffering.
Yes.
You want continental or you want South Indian? What kind of suffering you want?
You cannot be immortal and you will have to pass through. So which exit gates do you choose?
Correct. Correct. And I saw a small shot on this that
Uh-huh.
somebody has been given death sentence.
Uh-huh.
There are two people who are standing next to him, and he says, 24 hours to go and you will be executed.
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of death would you like? So, he says, I want an environment friendly green death. So, he says, what is the kind of green death you want? So, he said, I should be killed in the middle of nature and greenery. So, he says, what kind of greenery? So, he says, not this one. I want very intense, deep greenery. So, he takes them to a forest and escapes from there. So, okay. So these remain. Should we break for a cup of tea, then come back and complete it? Fragmentation of the self. This is almost like a generic thing, like healthy self. So if the fragmentation happens, we have entire range of disorders, but the most common are psychosis, personality disorders, anxiety, obsession, panic, manic, all of those are fragmentation. Empathy we did. Optimal frustration. Frustration too less, we get into narcissism. Too high, sorry, too less, we get into dependence. Too high, we get into narcissism. Too less, some will use reaction formation and still get into narcissism. Too less, somebody will go into autism. Somebody will go into antisocial. Somebody will go into chronic depression. Somebody will go into chronic addiction. These are non-optimal frustrations. Transmuting internalization, which is actually a generic thing. I have written something because it had to be filled up, but otherwise, that is true for every healing. And if this does not happen, nothing chronic can be healed. Anything chronic or anything acute can be healed. Not acute, but anything chronic can be healed to the extent that transmuting internalization happens. Arc of tension. It will lead to personality disorders, anxiety, depression, addiction. Essentially, this has to do with the professional performance and professional anxiety. That if deep within one believes I am not good enough, then one carries professional anxiety for a very long time. And for many people, it takes almost 35 to 40 years of age when they feel settled and they don't feel anxious any longer. First 10-15 years of their work life, they keep having this anxiety. Will I survive or will I not survive? Will I be able to perform or will I be thrown out of the organization? In homeopathy, this is the third line in the periodic table. The line of potassium, beryllium, and so on. The third row. And they dilute the third row elements in pure form or in some combination form to make medicine to take care of this professional anxiety. See, if someone comes to a homeopath and says that I constantly have this fear, will I survive in my profession or I'll be thrown out? And I also have uh, orthopedic pain in my knee, arthritic pain in my knee. I also have uh, breathing trouble at times. So he will essentially look for that anxiety, that the core is the professional anxiety. And for that, most likely, not inevitably, but most likely, he will find something in that third line to be used as a medicine.
Potassium, beryllium.
Yeah. The line goes on, and I think it has arsenic also somewhere on that line. I think it's potassium, beryllium, boron, and something more. I don't recall.
Yes. Yes, sir.
But dilution of that particular line is used when the anxiety is primarily professional. And as you go towards the right, the intensity of anxiety reduces. Like arsenic is dealing with environmentally caused anxiety, which is more of acute nature, not of chronic nature. But potassium, the homeopathic drug will be Kali carbonicum. The Kali carbonicum will be dealing with very deep rooted chronic anxiety about the professional performance. So the more you are towards the left side, the more deeper you are addressing something. And the more you are to the right side, you are addressing something lighter and something more environmental rather than something inside. So it is that kind of thing that you see here, arc of tension. So if a patient comes for arc of tension, if a patient comes for professional anxiety, in Kohut's framework, we evoke the concept of arc of tension, and homeopathic prescription will be something on that line, third line of the periodic table, which of course the homeopath will decide based upon other characteristics also, but primarily it will be that thing. And you can combine both of them to good results. Sense of continuity, or we can say going on being, the borderline personality disorder and all sorts of disassociations, panic states, manic states, dissociative states, all of those will be covered by a sense of continuity. So this is how we relate Kohutian concepts to DSM disorder. Now, disorders. Now let us look at therapy. Kohut's therapy is radically different from classical psychoanalytic psychotherapy. And though it is psychoanalytic in the sense it believes in the unconscious and the unconscious dynamics of pathology, but in operation it's very different. This is a very safety-driven therapy. Very slow, very easy, very relaxed, very accommodating, safety-providing therapy, where interpretation and intervention is not really the main tool. The main tool is safety and holding. In classical psychoanalytic therapy, interpretation is a very major tool of conducting therapy and introducing change. But here, interpretation is not the main thing. It is holding, allowing the person to relive the experience. Because remember, Kohut looks at pathology not like Freud, who saw it as a drive conflict, not as Klein, who saw it as an object relations conflict, but as a developmental arrest. It's a very different view of pathology. So Kohut and Winnicott both look at it as a developmental arrest.
What Karen Horney also said. Karen Horney, that your mind is like like an acorn, a seed of the oak tree. It doesn't have to be taught how to become a 100 feet tall tree. You just remove the difficulties that are in the way and you will be fine.
Correct. So that's a developmental approach to pathology, that the natural development has been impeded by a trauma and you undo the trauma. And the way to do it in Kohutian framework is to allow the person to relive what could not be lived completely in early childhood. So if, for example, the child did not have good self-object experiences, then the patient in the therapy room will naturally try to have a self-object experience. And if the therapist allows that to happen and does not use interpretation to create distance and hierarchy, then the self-object experiences will go on, it will get completed, and with the completion and the ongoing progress of self-object experiences, the healing experiences also will go on. And that is very, very true in a group of people. In a group of people, I have seen that it's only this thing that works. So there is definitely a distinct group of people. I'm not sure how generalizable it would be. But if you ask me, do you have a group to which this applies? Definitely is. How big that group is a second question. Or what kind of pathology it applies to is a different question. But is there a group? Yes, there is a group where this holding and the twinship experiences, especially in the middle-aged group, the twinship experiences help because it provides them the safety so they can speak what they want to speak, think what they want to think, feel what they want to feel without any fear of the intervention of the other. Because the intervention of the other reminds them of pathological intervention by adults in childhood. So they don't see the intent behind it, they club it with traumatic interventions of others in the past. And their idea is they want to say, ki for once, let me just speak and you listen. So they are yet to speak their heart out. Until that happens, they don't want your brilliant interpretations or analysis of dreams. They only want you to listen. So you have to hold back your brilliance. And that is such a narcissistic injury that we have to hold back our brilliance and allow them to just speak and provide them a safe receiver. And naturally, the movement happens. This is what I have seen, that in many cases, for years, you keep doing interpretation, nothing happens. And when you get into this holding and this twinship, things start moving on their own. Now, somebody can say that work was done in the past and now you're harvesting with this technique. But some can also say it is this technique which is doing all of it. And in some cases, I really feel it is not harvesting. It is this technique which is really working. The person will look forward to mirroring experiences, living out their narcissism, their grandiosity, their exhibitionism. And Kohut says, let them live out. If you interpret and bring in reality, it will go down under, get repressed even more, producing more shame. It will be repressed even more than before, and healing will become even more difficult. So the interpretation will not bring about a healing. It will actually accentuate the pathology. In Kohutian approach, the empathy and holding are the key. It is not interpretation, it is not intervention, it is not the tightness of the frame, it is the holding and the empathy. Some people customize this to teenagers and they develop even a more liberal technique called joining in, that you not only do an act of omission, and allow the person to live out, you actually join in to some extent. You do an act of commission, a taboo act of commission from a traditional standpoint. And they felt it works with teenagers because the classical approach does not work. Their opinion. So
If
holding
the mental age is that of a teenager all the time, many patients have mental age in the teenager range. So many times joining in helps them.
true, because
Many,
teenage and young age, for many people in the developing world, they have never lived it out.
oh yes.
So the idea here is the approach is holding an empathy now, self-object experiences now, interpretation later. And all of this works to what Kohut says, restoration of the self. That the self has been injured in the childhood and we have to restore the self now. So he defines healing like this, the restoration of the self. And my own experience, as I said, mirroring and twinship, they work very well, at least in personality disorders and psychosis, the two categories that I primarily see. Primarily, it's personality disorders that I see. And it works very well there. Let us now look at evolution of Kohut's thought. Which all areas his ideas have traveled to. One, self-psychology has developed itself. So there is a classical development of self-psychology done by the thinkers I have listed out. And they are very prominent Kohutian thinkers. Ernest Wolff especially. Ornstein also. Second, many of his ideas have traveled to an area that some people have developed called self-object psychology, where they have tried to combine Klein and Kohut. Object relation psychology and self-psychology, both of them together. Some people have developed an approach called motivational systems theory, and some of his ideas have traveled there. Some people have took those ideas to create something called optimal responsiveness, relational developmental self-psychology, intersubjective self-psychology, attachment-based self-psychology, and contemporary relational self-psychology. All these areas are where ideas of Kohut have traveled. They have enriched these areas in some way or the other. Who are the thinkers, leading thinkers in this self-psychology area? One, of course, is the founder, Heinz Kohut, and others are Ernest Wolff, Ornstein, the two Ornsteins, Lichtenberg, Lechman, Fossage, Tolpin, Bacall, and Goldberg. Writings, if you see, you will see very good writings by Ernst Wolff. So with this, we complete Kohut, hence Kohut. And next time, we will start with Margaret Mahler, where we'll focus upon separation, individuation.
Yes,
And
sir.
Kohut and Mahler are two thinkers who I believe have not got their due recognition in the world of psychoanalysis. Because some of the ideas they have put forward are really very good.
Sir.
Anything that comes to your mind? How was the
No,
psych
sir.
conference the other day? There's something on dream analysis, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. It was according to our class. if we compare it with the class, then it was more for the one session delivery. Dr. Kulkarni was good. He was fluent. He was non-obtrusive. He requested confidentiality, so there were no pictures or nothing to be shared. And they discussed some of the dreams, some of the paintings he showed, and I also shared our souvenir, which I don't remember if I shared with you. I will share it with you if you permit.
Yeah,
It
please.
was a it was a souvenir of 2014 IPS conference in which a lady who drew paintings, she donated them for our souvenir.
Acha.
I used to help her and she feels that she was helped. So she insisted that I should be there for the first exhibition of her paintings many years ago. And then I was the one who inaugurated them. So much of narcissism. And then
Healthy
she
one.
has uh,
Healthy narcissism.
she has done good paintings, and they were similar. So I exchanged them. They said there is no book on dream analysis. So I was happy to tell them that there is a book, and then I shared the link to your book group.
Oh, very
So
good.
Ajay from sorry, Ajay from um, Raipur, he was the organizer or coordinator in that listing. So he also appreciated them. And many people have that link now to that book that was there. And I believe it was nice, but it did not go into depth. No Freudian analysis of dream or Jungian or no such things were mentioned. Generic dream analysis.
Oh, that brings me to a point. I think I forgot. Uh,
Uh-huh.
Next time, before we do Mahler, let us
Yes,
do a few dream analysis from Winnicott and Kohut standpoint. We have not done that.
fantastic.
Let us do that.
Positively.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.